the theme for our little gathering today, as I said earlier, was one father, one family, and one yajna. And about 4 years ago, I had the fortune of going to Pakistan. And I was actually invited to an interfaith gathering, an interfaith conference in Pakistan. Apparently, it's the only interfaith conference they have in Pakistan. And it was in Lahore at a university. And when I arrived there, actually, it was an interesting experience. I arrived at the airport and I was met at the airport. And then the car got just outside the airport, 10 meters, and the car stopped. And a man hopped in with a submachine gun into the car. And they said, "He's your bodyguard while you're here." I thought, oh, that's a new experience of a service tour. I had my own personal bodyguard with a machine gun. He was just such a sweet person. Anyway, I went on to the conference, and just before it was to begin, they made me the keynote speaker. They hadn't told me, but you'll be the keynote speaker. And the first session was with a huge mullah. He was like a Muslim priest, and he was the minister of religious harmony in Pakistan. And it was an amazing conference, actually. And he was such a big-hearted person. But afterwards, I went down to Karachi. And when I took leave from Daddy Jenki, I was, you know, when Daddy was she always had her blessings and Toli beside her. I'm looking at Pravina at the moment because anyway, she said to me, "What is your plans?" And she started to get all these things. And I said, "Daddy, I'm going to Pakistan." She kept going, "Pakistan?" She sort of suddenly heard it and she said, "Take my soul with you." And anyway, I went down to Karachi and we had a little center at that time. And, you know, while I was there, I went to Baba's home, Brahma Baba's home, and it was such a beautiful place, such a, like a colonial home, beautiful home where he lived. And now Pakistan's top fashion designer owns that home. He was in New York doing a collection. And so the lady there showed us around the home and it was just incredible. And then I went to Kunch Bhavan where all the sisters stayed. I'm not quite sure how many sisters stayed, but there was a few hundred. So you can imagine the size of that place. It's a school now. You know, when Baba left Pakistan at the time of partition, it became a hotel. And then it became the Russian embassy. Baba's home became the Russian embassy. And now it's a school, and it's called Bayview High School. And there's lots of classrooms where the sisters used to sleep, but it's just the same. It was just amazing to be there. I got such an incredible feeling. And when I was in that place, we were there for a few hours, and I could see where they took all the photos, the photos we see of the early Yajna days. And I felt so much love being in that building. And it was almost like I had the feeling that Shiv Baba, the ocean of love, came into Brahma Baba and filled him with so much love. He just let go everything. You know how Baba just let go everything? It's like he found something better. And the natural response to that love was he just renounced everything. And then, you know, Baba filled all the daddies with that love as well. And they also just left everything. And I really began to feel that this life really, the seed of this life is that to taste that love from Shiv Baba, that purity of love, that true love. And you don't have to think, should I leave this or not? What should I do? It's just a natural consequence when the soul really falls in love in that way. And it was just so powerful to be there. And, you know, in the front yard, there's now a basketball court in the front of what was Kunch Bhavan. And we were standing there thinking, because when they went to India, they dug big holes and they buried big trunks of moolies and things. And we were thinking, oh, we should get out a shovel and start to dig up the basketball court, see if, just imagine it's still sitting there. But, really, I think that this love that Baba gives us is really the great power of the Confluence age. And I remember once we were in an RC meeting with Daddy Janki, and all of you know her, or most of you do, and we were just talking about all the things we used to talk about, and she stopped and she became silent, and she gave all drishti, and I remember seeing it's like her eyes were like little light bulbs of love. They were just radiating love, and it just changed the whole atmosphere in the room. And I remember she then said, "It's love that makes me move. It's love that makes me tireless. It's love that's taken me beyond all limits." All the self-imposed limits we put on ourselves, or, we put myself in the prison of limitation. I can't do this. I'm shy. I'm not educated. It's love that takes me beyond all limits, and it's love that's taken me beyond all obstacles. And she said, learn how to draw true love from Baba. And I often really feel that what I love in my Brahman life these days is everything natural. I feel if I'm pushing myself, forcing myself, pressuring myself, I'm on the path of bhakti. I really believe that. That's the devotional sanskara, this force and this pressure, self-pressure. Baba's way is to fall in love. It's in the DNA on all of us to fall in love. Because when I naturally fall in love with Shiv Baba, I naturally remember him. The natural consequence of love is to remember. And when I naturally remember, I naturally transform. And when I naturally transform, I will naturally serve. Today, Baba was saying, children, whatever you do, you must do service, but you serve through who you are as a person. And if I really, reflect on my Brahman life, I really feel that, when my heart is full of love, that's when I feel so easy and relaxed about who I am. And sometimes I think that, at this time, the highest quality of love is available only at this time. The highest quality is available at no other time in eternity. This is the only time I can really taste the purity and true love from God. And you know how in the Gita it says, out of millions, only a few recognize me. And out of those few, only a handful understand me as I truly am. We've recognized Baba. We're one of those few who've recognized Baba. But have I recognized Baba's love? And am I really tasting that love? Because to me, it's the natural approach to this life. It's the natural way to progress. Really, if I fall in love with one, and today, what was Baba saying? When we get stuck in the spider web of human relationships, it's very difficult to really fall in love with one. But when I do fall in love with one, I think the whole of Brahman life just begins to flow naturally from that point. And someone asked me last night, my memory of when I came in Gyan, I was in London. And one day after I'd done the course, I was wandering along the street. And I was thinking, who is this Baba they keep talking about at the center? Who is he really? And it was like there was a pause button on time. Time stopped. And I felt absolutely absorbed in Baba's love. I felt completely loved to the core of my being. And I can remember feeling I've come home and this is where I belong. And I've never doubted it since. But it was that experience of Baba's love. And I once had an experience in 1980. I was actually mentioning this to you yesterday because Didi Manmohini came to America, and I came with her. And on my way back to Australia, I stopped in India. And I was the only double foreigner in Madhaban at that time. And Daddy Prakashmani was reading the Muli one morning. And all the senior sisters had come for a meeting from around India. They'd come to attend a meeting, but there wasn't a scheduled time for Baba to come. So Daddyji would read a few lines and say, look, all of Baba's lovely children are here. Baba should come and meet you. Then she'd read a few more lines and say, look, Baba should come. And at the end of the Muli, she said, Gulzar, come, go to Baba. I think only Daddy Prakashmani could do that. And so Daddy Gulzar, as you know, so humble, she came and she sat and she went to Baba. This is like 7:30 in the morning. And Baba came. And it was in the meditation hall. And I remember Baba said, Baba hasn't come to speak the Muli. Baba's come to fulfill the love of the children. It's like the children called. And each one of those original sisters, I was sitting about where you are, right in front. Each one came and lay across Baba's lap, Avyapapada's lap. And Baba stroked them and patted them and, he was like... And when I was observing that, I really felt this is why the daddies became so powerful. Baba's love pulled them beyond everything limited. And really, I believe that is the method of Raj Yoga, really, to fall so deeply in love with Baba that I naturally begin to remember Baba and forget all the other stuff. And sometimes I think, what is meditation? What is meditation? Meditation is just allowing myself to be completely loved by Baba. And if I can't feel that love, then what is knowledge? Knowledge is observing where I block that love. And really, I feel that the big block for most of us is that sense of unworthiness that I've collected in the second half of the cycle. The sense that I'm not pure enough to be loved by Baba. And this is really, when I can remove that block, this is when really the heart opens completely and I can really feel that quality of love. And once I went to stay with Jagdish Bhai in Delhi, in Shakti Nagar, in the old days. Can I ask who has met Jagdish Bhai here? Yeah, quite a few. He was an extraordinary soul, and I said to him, I'd love to meet you. I've got some questions. And he said, I'm busy, but I've got half an hour. We had dinner, and then we talked till midnight, like 4 or 5 hours. And he said something which really penetrated deeply within me. He said, the cycle is a love story. And it's funny because he was an incredible intellectual, Jagdish Bhai, but he had a big heart. He was very loving. The cycle is a love story. The golden age is a world of love. And, no concept of difference in that world whatsoever. But when we come to the copper age, it's not that we stop loving, we just begin to love the wrong things. So when I love my body, it becomes ego. When I love the bodies of others, it becomes lust and attachment. When I love material things, it becomes greed. In a way, all the vices are as perverted forms of love, misdirected love. I'm just loving the wrong things. And when we come to the confluence age, it's like Baba gives us this incredible education. What is true love? What is accurate love? And once Baba said, true love is to love that which always exists. True love is to love that which always exists. When I attach my heart to anything temporary, then I build, suffering and unhappiness into my life. So when I really love Baba as a soul, love myself as a soul, love others as souls, that's really like the foundation of really beginning true love. And so we have this extraordinary education from Baba, shifting the focus of my love from temporary to eternal, from physical to spiritual, from love based on emotion to love based on truth. That love based on emotion is that love that loves you one day and the next day they don't want to know you, It's very fickle. You never know where you stand. But love based on truth, how Baba says to have a loving intellect. And that's really love based on truth. I see your value and I fix my vision on your value. And even if your mood goes up and down or left or right, I have that same feeling for you. And so Baba shifts that, and even shifts that from dependent love to pure love. So we have this incredible education how to love accurately. And I honestly believe if I just love the right things, I will become pure. All this life is loving accurately, and that will make me pure. And loving Baba as a soul. You may have heard that in the 1968, I think, Baba held a seminar in Madhaban on remembrance. I love it. We have seminars on global functioning and all this sort of stuff. Baba had it on remembrance. And he sat all the older sisters around the history hall and he said, okay, how much do you remember Baba? How much do you remember Baba? How much do you remember Baba? And when it came to Daddy Prakashmani, Baba asked her, how much do you remember Baba? And she said, 1 hour a day. When I heard that, I felt a lot better, actually. And really, I think what Daddy was meaning, there's two types of love I see. There's indirect love or devotional love, love based on belief. And even for some of we Brahmins, it's more a belief that Baba is the ocean of love. But we get something from that. But direct love or spiritual love is the love of a yogi. When I really become a bodiless soul and I connect with the ocean of love, that is the seed of the highest power for the soul to really absorb that love. And if I love the one who's incorporeal, egoless, and viceless, what do I become? What do I become? I become the same. But I think what happens is we have that love for Baba. So sometimes we remember Baba, but then in a millisecond, the subtle thread of my intellect, what did Baba say today? Goes to the name and form of a human soul. And each time I remember Shiv Baba, the eternal seed, it's like I take power. In the next millisecond, I remember a human soul, a name and form. It's like I drain of power. And it's what happens that when I remember human beings, it's like I give power back to my impurity. I give power back to my body consciousness. And I think this is why often we don't feel we're really progressing. We love Baba. We have faith in Baba. We remember Baba. But in the next instant, we go back and we remember bodily beings. So it's like I reinforce my pure sanskaras and I give power back to my impure sanskaras. And really, at the heart of this life, I believe myself, the most powerful point of spiritual knowledge is to have all relationships with one. This is the truth that will really heal me deeply when the whole subtle thread is sustained by one. But when my subtle thread keeps going to the spider web, that's when I don't really feel I'm moving forward like I should be. And so that really, when I remember other souls as souls, when I have that love for them as souls, then, or myself as a soul, and then I love others as souls too. Because I remember once we were meeting Baba when I was, I think, 30 years in Gyan. And Baba made us stand up in Diamond Hall. And Baba gave us drishti and said some lovely things. And then he said, set a date for perfection. And a few of us went, how do you do that? And then we began to discuss, what is perfection? It's a sort of a nebulous term. I mean, how does it look in practical? How is perfection revealed in day-to-day life? And you know, the next Muli Baba said, perfection is to have loving feelings for everyone. To live in this world with all the variety of personalities, with all the different sets of sanskaras, with all the different belief systems and behaviors, and have loving feelings for everyone. Baba has love for everyone. And really, Baba said, when you become perfect, you too will be able to give love to all souls. I really love that sort of idea. And I think that, you know, the love story of the Confluence age, the natural way to move forward in this life is to fall in love with Baba, have loving feelings for Baba, have loving feelings for myself, and have loving feelings for everyone. This is the way that really takes the soul forward. And even this morning, Baba was describing, you know, that attachment is the thing that really, you know, holds me back. And how Baba is really encourages us to be detached and loving, detached and loving. And to me, detachment is natural. Detachment is my natural state. Because I think deep down, a lot of us really feel it's not that natural, you know. We have to sort of force myself to become detached. In the golden age, we are completely and utterly detached. And yet we're totally involved in families. And detachment is the sign of a deep relationship with Baba. When the soul's so lost in Baba, you're pulled beyond a lot of things. You're pulled beyond a lot of influences. You are naturally uninfluenced by the scenes of drama. And yet detachment, I would say, is the most misunderstood of all. You know, it's so misunderstood because, you know, sometimes people say, I'm detached, you know, and I'm very sort of aloof, disconnected, you know, all these sorts of things, non-caring. But really detachment, Baba's detachment is to be very loving, very caring, very close, but uninfluenced by. And I think that's what Baba filled the daddies with so much love, pulled them so much into that relationship. He took them beyond influences, and that's how they became powerful. And I really believe the natural method of Raja Yoga is to fall in love deeply. That's really the method that Baba wants us to use in this life. So, does anyone want to ask something? Are you, yes, there's, yes, please do.
Baba says you cannot know God unless you know yourself. And my thinking was like, you cannot love Baba unless you love yourself. And that's why I am in meditation, to know myself and to love Baba. Is that the first, you know?
Personally, I would say that it's the other way around. When you learn to love Baba, that's when you can love yourself. I think that's the method, really. The more you love Baba, the more you start to know your own value. And, you know, I was saying yesterday, one brother asked Baba, how do I get my self-respect back? And, Baba was just saying to follow Srimat. But I think that when we really, have that relationship with Baba, that's the seed that allows me to really begin to accept myself. If I feel loved and accepted by Baba, I can feel loved and accepted by myself. I would say, the relationship with Baba, the love of Baba is the main thing that heals the relationship with myself. It's the natural sort of byproduct as I start to feel more self-respect.
Okay, thanks.
Shanti. You'd mentioned about when you love material things, it becomes greed. When you love bodily beings, it becomes lust. Can you say something about your view on what the other main vices become when you love those things?
What I was really saying, I think, in a way, the vices are just misdirected love. So when my love focuses on, in a sense, the material world, so when I love my own body, that becomes ego. So it's misdirected love. When I love others' bodies, it's lust and dependence and attachment. When I love material things, it becomes greed, in a sense. So all the vices are is really just misdirected love. And so that's why Baba just comes, in a sense, all he does is educate us to refocus our love and love accurately. So when I love God, when I love myself as a soul and others as souls, when I love that which always exists, that's what heals me naturally. And the vices will automatically have less power over me.
How to go beyond superficial and deepen our experience with Baba and build deeper relationship with Baba. It's the whole way to it.
I think that when I started, the whole culture of the yagya was self-realization. And service was second, The whole of this life was about realizing who I am and having that relationship with Baba. But I would say in recent years, the whole culture has become more about service. And we give a lot of attention to service rather than really the self. And I think that, to put the effort in, to put the attention into soul conscious practice, etc., is really what Brahman life is about. And you've heard when Daddy Janki many times should say 90% of Brahman life should be a focus on the self. Because really, only when we change will things change. People want to see new human beings, not just more ideas and philosophy. And that's where I think that this life is, paying attention to myself at all moments. I go about my life, but I'm practicing. And for me, I sometimes think that a lot of us try to do too many things, We think I think I should be more tolerant. I should have good wishes. I should be more patient. I should be soul conscious. We try to do so many things, and I don't see progress in any one area. I believe to do one thing properly, and sustain an effort over a period of days, weeks, and months, and then you start to see a genuine change in yourself. And that's whether it's an aspect of soul consciousness or whatever, you feel your own pulse and see what I need. But really, this life is to pay deep attention to myself. That's really, and otherwise, I think if we just sort of more have faith in Baba, listen to the Murli, and then just go about my life and my thinking is just the same. It's a bit superficial. And that's why sometimes I think we can become Brahman devotees. We're Brahmins, but we live it like a devotee. We just have faith and we don't really practice much. A little bit, but not much. And that's where I really do feel Baba wants us to really apply what we're learning. Apply what we're learning. And I saying yesterday or somewhere recently, I forget where I was saying, that Baba in 1985 gave the realization course. And what Baba said was so profound. He said, you know the knowledge, you believe the knowledge, you teach the knowledge, but you don't experience the knowledge. And I think that's really what really, going deep into effort is converting what I know into what I feel. So I convert the knowledge of the self into deep peace. I convert the knowledge of God into deep love. I convert the knowledge of the three worlds into detachment, because each point of knowledge has an associated experience. Each point of knowledge is just not the way we're educated. Once we know something, we think that's it. I know it, that's it. That's the beginning here. You've got to unpack it so that I feel it, I taste it. And that's when it really becomes like a power in my life. When I extract the juice from the knowledge. Yeah, absolutely.
So the question is, what is the method or yukti to be truly carefree, but responsible at the same time and accountable?
What is the method to become truly carefree, but still responsible? I think one of the deepest things for Brahmins is to feel I'm an instrument. We use the language, Baba is doing, Baba's responsible, but I'm still feeling quite burdened and heavy. We do the lip service to it, but the real secret to remaining light is that it is Baba's work. It's Baba's center, they're Baba's children. I'm really strong on this because, I decided many years ago, I want to enjoy my Brahman life. I don't want to get weighed down and heavy because, it's the end of the Iron Age. Obstacles and problems will come. But to really feel that I'm just the instrument of Baba is such a deep state of awareness, I would say, to really feel that genuinely, that I'm just the instrument. It takes a lot of practice to feel that, but that's the foundation of feeling light in all situations. And if you heard Dadiji would always say it's his responsibility, he is doing, but she really felt it. And how light was Dadiji? Her lightness just made everyone light. Who had the experience when you were around her, you felt light, you just felt some heaviness disappear? Who had that feeling? I've had that feeling too. That's the power when you really feel you're just an instrument. And I really love that whole sort of thought of being carefree, because sometimes we have these thoughts, I have to do, I carry the burden of responsibility, or I have done, I carry the burden of the past. Even I have to fix. A lot of Brahmins feel I have to fix the problems. I have to sort out the issues. I don't. They're Baba's responsibility. And that's not, we still remain responsible, we do, but mentally, I take away the burden. I feel I'm just an instrument. Otherwise, I think sometimes in taking on service, we get heavier and heavier and more burdened. And to be honest, I've been through that in my early days. Trying so hard to do service, I felt heavy. I used to feel heavy about situations and feel responsible for what was going right and what was going wrong. In the early 80s in Australia, just things flourished and, everything we touched just turned to gold. And you know, it was so easy. And I thought, oh, Brahman life's easy. Then the 90s was exactly the opposite. Nothing happened. You know, it was just dead flat. But it was a good lesson for me to realize it's really Baba's responsibility. And if I feel a bit intoxicated when things go well, and then heavy when things go badly, it's like I'm still carrying that sort of burden of responsibility. It goes to the heart of ego. My ego, the eye of ego, wants to take a burden. And the eye of ego is so clever. Even if I don't have a burden, I'll find ones from somewhere, you know. I'm so clever at finding them. So I think, you know, to become carefree is really such a beautiful thing, but just feel I'm an instrument. It is Baba's task. Yeah. Do you remember the photo of Baba? I love that photo where he's laying back like this. You know that photo? It's the embodiment of the carefree emperor. Don't you get the feelings that, and you know what, how much did Baba have to face? How much did Baba have to face from the community, even from within some of the children? And yet he remained double light because he really knew that it was Shiv Baba's responsibility. Easy to say, but to really be that is something very deep, very deep. Mm.
So the question is, what was your first experience meeting Dadi Prakash Mani, and what thoughts did you take home on that day? At the end of the day, what was occupying your mind?
I'm trying to remember when I first met Daddy Ji. It was probably when I first went to Madhaban, which was 1975. You know, actually, when I went to, the first time I went to Madhaban, I'll just share this. Before I left, Daddy Jenki said to us that the routine was when you arrived in Madhaban, the new students, you go and sit in the history hall. Daddy Manoharindra would come and meet you, and she'd ask the question, how many fathers do you have? Textbook, straight out of the textbook. And so Daddy Jenki said to me, she's going to ask you how many fathers you have. Tell her you've got 4. So she asked us, how many fathers do you have? And I said 4. And she looked at me and said, oh, the poor thing is confused, you know. And then I said, you know, Shiv Baba, Brahma Baba, oh no, Sakha Baba, Avyak Baba, and then my Lokik father. And she went, oh, she thought, wow, this is a really good student. And then I told her she was set up by Daddy Jenki. So, but yeah, I mean, I've have many lovely, you know, memories of Daddy Ji. Yeah. She's reminded me of one, so I'll tell you that one. One of my first memories was I'd been there for 6 weeks, and on my last night I was there. We were in the history hall and Baba had come. And you know, when Baba's leaving, Baba feeds everyone. And as Baba was feeding everyone, there was chit-chat going on. And Daddy Ji said to me, say something to Baba. And I don't speak Hindi. So she started to say things and I just repeated like a parrot. So she said in Hindi, Baba, I love you. And I just said, you know, I just copied it. And then she said something like, Baba, I searched for you for so long. And it went on like this and I was just copying. And then she said something and everyone laughed, including Baba. Even Baba was laughing a lot. And she said in Hindi, I am Baba, I'm a monkey. So this newborn child looked in Baba's eyes and said, Baba, I'm a monkey. And so Daddy Ji was so much fun, wasn't she? She was so much fun. And even I remember in one of those first times I was there, we used to have Brahma Bhojan. Do you remember the Brahma Bhojans where you'd sit in lines and the thalis were all there and people would come and serve? And anyway, we'd had dinner. It was all very silent and yogi, and they served ice cream. And then we're all sort of remembering Baba. And Didi Manmohini got her ice cream and poured it all over Daddyji. And then Daddyji got her ice cream, and before you knew it, ice cream was everywhere. But what I really loved about that was that, you know, when the daddies had to be really yogi, they were. But we're children, aren't we? We're just Baba's children, and they could be so light. And Daddyji was so light. One of the memories that I really enjoyed was once she was in Australia, and a few of us were sitting with her and we were talking with her. And we said to Daddyji, how do you run this huge yagya? Hundreds of thousands of Brahmins with so different personalities and different sanskaras. How do you run the yagya? And the first thing Daddy said, I never try to control anyone. I give everyone freedom. That is so much wisdom. You know what she did? She allowed everyone freedom. And when you given that freedom, then you come close and you will listen. She was so smart in the way she did things. And then she said, first I listen, then I teach. I just don't tell people things. I listen to their heart. And really, if someone listens to your heart, you will then listen to them too. But the third thing she said, I'll never forget, she said, I trust everyone. And I remember one of the Australians said, really, Daddy, can you trust everybody? She said, I invest trust in everyone. And, you know, when someone trusts you, you want to live up to that trust, you know, you want to be good and remain good in their eyes. She was such an incredible leader. And I remember once I was in New York and I was with a film crew and we interviewed Dr. James Jonah. Remember James Jonah, he was the Undersecretary General for Political Affairs, and he was quite close to the BKs. And I asked him this question, who's the most impressive leader you've ever met? And this was the time of Ronald Reagan, Mikhail Gorbachev, all those sort of people. The Gorbachev who just died yesterday or the day before. And he'd met them all. And you know what he said? Daddy Prakashmani is the most impressive leader I've met. Yeah. Because he said her leadership's based on her example. She was a living example, not doing deals and things. And Daddy really, I found, was an extraordinary leader. And she just created, leadership is about relationship, actually. All leadership, management is a different thing. It's organizing systems, administration. But real leadership is creating relationship with everyone. And Daddyji just created this loving relationship. And I honestly believe she kept our yagya together through her loving relationships. And once I traveled to South India with her in the train. You know, who's been on the train from Mount Abu to South India? I have. It was nearly 1.5 days. And, you know, Daddyji was with us. She read us the Muli in English. She was so natural. She was absolutely natural. She would just fit in with everyone in such an easy way. Really, really lovely. And, you know, once in Australia, and the first time she came in Australia, in 1977, she went on a world tour and she visited all the centers outside India, 3-month world tour. And we were the last. Australia was the last place she stopped. And one day we did a program in Sydney University in this magnificent hall, beautiful hall, and about 400 people came. And they put on a play about the cycle. And a lot of them were musicians and actors. It was so powerful. People were absolutely touched deeply, and everyone was very intoxicated. And when we went back, you could imagine these were very new Brahmins, and most of them, the average age was about 20 years old. We hadn't cooked anything. Everyone was so involved in getting this program happening. So do you know who cooked dinner? Daddyji cooked dinner for all of us. So she was the special speaker. Then she came back, and we were never quite sure whether she was cooking it because of love or she didn't really like the food we were cooking for her. No, we felt she was doing it out of love, but that was how humble she was. Absolutely humble. And actually, I remember a story Chandraben told, and maybe you know it better than me. But in my memory, when Daddyji left the body, I was in Shantivan, and who was in Baba's or Daddyji's meeting room where we shared stories? And I remember that Chandraben, I think, said that she was from Daddyji's center. Was that right? In Bombay. And one time they were going to Madhaban and they got to the train. This is my memory of the story. And they had there were 7 of them and they had 6 tickets. And they had grain, you know how they always used to take rice and things. So she was the youngest, Chandraben, so all the sisters went into the bunks and they went to sleep. And Chandraben was sitting on the grain, up all night. And early in the morning, 1 or 2 o'clock, Daddyji woke up and saw Chandraben sitting there. She got out of her bed and put Chandraben in her bed. And that was 1 year before she became the main instrument. So humble, and such an extraordinary example. And when a leader is so humble like that, it's very powerful, isn't it? Elizabeth, have I got the story right? Or
Charlie Bai did get the story accurately, but the last scene, Chandraben would narrate is she would be tucked back into bed where Daddy was sleeping in the bunk. And she looked at the silhouette of Daddyji sitting on a sack of potatoes, nodding off. And that touched Chandraben so deeply, it changed her life.
Thank you.